Beautiful. Good morning. Oh, for you, it's afternoon.
Well, it's actually still morning for a few more minutes.
So, Richard, I had the pleasure of a couple of years ago at the Jiu-Jitsu Lifestyle Summit, and you were so, what's the right word for it? Like, just generous with your time to sit down and kind of chat with me and share your experience with Jiu-Jitsu at the time. And it was such an interesting story to me, hearing it in person, that I just wanted to take time to ask you about it now. So you were at the forefront of Jiu-Jitsu when it came to America, and having that relationship with Rorion. And just my biggest thought was, one of our hardest things to do as instructors is get people to step onto the mat, because of this like there's this preconceptions they have of what Jiu-Jitsu is. And so my thought was, you stepping into it, what was your initial learning experience about what Jiu-Jitsu was? Because people have the UFC now as a reference point, but back in the the 80s, I don't know what that would have been like for you guys.
Well, when I started, it was 1979.
Yeah.
And I mean, there wasn't, like I told the story earlier this week, and it's just I happened to have that look like, I mean, I don't really believe that there's chance meetings, but it looked like a chance meeting because I was going nowhere in life. And then I ran into Rorion, and he wanted this mattress that I had. And then when he told me about his family, I just said, like, well, I mean, one, as I said, I didn't quite know how to take it because, when I thought of like martial arts champions, usually I thought of Asian, I thought of guys kicking in the air going, ha, ha, doing this kind of stuff. So when he told me, and he invited me for a free class, a private class.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, what do I have to lose? Maybe he might kick my ass, but, like I've told many others, I said, I used to go in, pay $10, and including the first class was free. And basically, because I was in such a negative place, it was an outlet for me besides the exercise that I did, because I always exercise after the age of 14, when I lost weight from, and I started exercising because I was really a weak, sickly kid, almost like Helio Gracie. I was just, I started, exercising, and then I could go in, pay this guy $10, and he would teach me to kick his ass. And I'm like, this was so much fun here, when I'd throw him and I do arm locks on him, and and then when we do headlock escapes, and I'd make the frame and he would take my arm or my hand going for an arm lock, and he would take the hand right over here and he'd push it down to the ground. He's taking my hand, pushing his face down to the ground so he can't move, so I can go for an arm lock. And I'm just like, that's the way. For me, it was like, this was so much fun.
Yeah.
I didn't see it as martial arts now, because if guys walk into your gym, just to walk in and to see it, especially the sparring part, man, that's a totally different reality from how it was with me, because I was privately trained.
Yeah. It's such an overwhelming experience when people see two people rolling, because it is just this convoluted entanglement of bodies going in it, and it can look aggressive if people aren't taught the right way to roll initially. And also interesting that you were talking about like Rorion prompting you through the different techniques, because that's so emphasized in the way that we learn to teach from the Gracies, and he's already doing it in the late 70s. So it wasn't something that they developed late in the piece. It sounds like it was just part of their culture the whole time, which is to like build people up through Jiu-Jitsu, rather than, like when I learned karate, it was very much about, I'm going to show you how karate works, and then you need to figure out how to do it yourself. Whereas this was almost like leading you the whole way through.
Yeah. I mean, if you've obviously you've gone through the ICP.
Yeah.
So, and you see the way they direct you.
Mm.
I mean, especially that there's that one video of Rorion taking the person by the hand,
Yeah.
taking them over, and here, this is how you show to do it. I mean, like when he would do something, you know, he'd say like no thumbs, you know, you'd hold like this or something, and he'd take your thumb and like this and put his hand on top and go, very good, you know, and I'm like, very good, you did it. You know, but still you felt like, okay, yeah, I followed your instruction. So it was so easy. And even still, I do this to this day. You know, there's still, I mean, and I have a kind of a bigger challenge than the regular jiu-jitsu guys because I'm in a Krav Maga school. So some of the guys see this, and because Krav Maga is by nature a very aggressive kind of art. So when they see it in my class and they come in and they start to, you know, get really aggressive with their movements, and here I'm telling them like, guys, slow, relax, you know, learn the technique. You can always get aggressive later.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would think now that because of it's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and you guys are really talking about self-defense, that guys it might be a little easier to walk into a school like yours than it is to walk into, you know, anybody out there who's just teaching BJJ.
Yeah. And I guess like we talk about like the perception of being something that's difficult for people to overcome, but for yourself training and not having any preconception of what it's meant to look like besides what you're being led to in the private lessons, what were some of the challenges that came up for you while you were learning in that early part of Jiu-Jitsu's history?
You know, the challenges were, for me, I think like most people, the challenges are whatever is inside here that, because I was doing drugs when I first met Rorion, and I had, you know, and I was abusing for a couple years. So when you start to use drugs on a regular basis, it changes your brain chemistry. And I wasn't the happiest person in the world. I wasn't the happiest person until I got stoned, but the drugs would wear off, and, you know, then I was back to my miserable self.
Yeah, it was like a short release.
Right. And then when you come down, you're kind of in a bad mood. You're negative. So the moves that he was showing me, I was like, you know, if I didn't get it right, through his excitement saying, yeah, do it like this, like this, like it. And I was like going, God, I can't get this right. I mean, I suck. I mean, the negative talk, that was my biggest detriment. Was the biggest detriment to my learning, because I didn't think from past experience, one, being a poor student in school, because I couldn't stand the traditional crap that they're teaching school. You know, and by the way, at a side note, I was just talking to one of my students who's a school teacher, and she teaches high school, and she said, Richard, she goes, online right now, she goes, I have to teach Hamlet. How important is it for high school kids to learn Hamlet? I mean, it's like, it was important to me because I remember to be or not to be. You know, that's my remembrance of Hamlet. It's like, yeah, maybe it's nice to learn English a little bit, but I was a poor student. So, and it didn't affect my learning of the things that were essential to me. But what it did is it left almost a mental scar for years, thinking I could not learn because I didn't like to learn what they were teaching in school. So when I carried it through when I did jiu-jitsu, I went like, oh, fuck, I'm not going to be able to learn this stuff. You know, and then Rorion said, Richard, there's no such thing as a bad student. There's just bad teachers. But he said, I'm the best. So you just come to class. That's your job. Come back to class and you'll learn at the rate you're supposed to learn. But you will learn. I'm like, okay. So that was my biggest thing for myself.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we talk about measuring devices, like people trying to work out how they're progressing. and most people put their measuring device as the end result, like what the technique looks like in comparison to how the teacher did it. And we talk about that a lot in class, like as being something that people have to overcome. And you're saying like that's the same hurdle that you had all the way back then, is like getting out of your own head and having this unrealistic or even just misguided conception of what the end result is meant to be. And it just puts these barriers in place all the time as you're trying to learn. I guess, do you see this coming up with the students that you teach as well? Like this hurdle of just like them not understanding how to measure their own progress.
You know, I see it on occasion. I mean, I hear things, you know, and Rorion told me a long time ago, he said, I can tell you a lot about the person. Just give them, let me teach them 1 or 2 classes and I'll tell you about the person's personality.
Yeah.
And at first I went like, you know, I don't think so. But now being a teacher for, gosh, I've been teaching for 28 years and I see it in people. I go like, oh my God, like when you show them how to do something and it's a relatively new move. And let's say, you know, when you're doing the grip for the Americana and you do this and you catch them and then I go over and take their thumb, I go like this and they say things like, oh, I always do that. I go like, you don't always do anything. You just learned this. So how can you always do something? You just started.
Yeah.
So that shows you what's going on in their brain, their own critical ability to learn.
Yeah.
So I see it and people are, you know, like, because I teach very different than most people. When I teach, because I'm limited in the amount of classes that I get a week, instead of saying, okay, we're going to learn this on Wednesday and learn this on Thursday, because I'm in one center where I teach Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday, I tend to teach the same moves for about 3 weeks. Yeah. And then I'll slowly add things to them. I won't go from one move to say, okay, now we're going to do this. I'm not going to go from punch block to mounted. Yeah. If I do punch block series, I'm going to do punch block for about 2 to 3 weeks and add things to that. Yeah. And the one thing that people have said about me is that you may not learn a lot of moves with me. Yeah. But the moves that you learn are inside. I mean, you own them because you've repeated it for so long. You come out of my classes after a while and you are solid with basics. Yeah. And as people have said, basics win the fight. So I tend to repeat a lot, less moves, but repetition of those moves.
Yeah, and ingrain it into the person as they're learning it that way.
Right.
One of the things that I've always been interested in is like there's the classic story of you providing the check for the first Gracie Academy to kind of get off the ground and get started. And right. You know, it you have to have some belief in what you're learning and the person who's teaching you to kind of make that happen. And I guess for you, like, what was it? What was it that made you feel like I need to support this?
On Facebook today, there's a little blurb about what Rorion said to me years ago. And he was going in because back then it was go in to a martial arts school, usually karate, taekwondo, one of the standing arts, and say you're going to share with the teacher, like, I want to see what you have and you see what I have. Yeah. And Rorion would go in and most likely he ended up making an enemy because it's hard for him to go in, see those guys, you know, doing ha ha ha, kicking and stuff. And he says, well, what about if you go to the ground? What about if you fall down to the ground, some guy mounts on top of you? And the teacher, their answer is, that'll never happen to me. Yeah. You know, he says, well, wait a second. It might not happen to you, but what about your students? You know? So Rorion would, you know, the guy would make some kind of stuff, and they'd, be uncomfortable because they didn't know how to answer. And then Rorion would say things like, well, I think, that your art isn't that good. And then the guy would get pissed. And then Rorion would say, I think you're shit, and so is your art.
Yeah.
So, that wasn't conducive to getting the people to be his friend.
Yeah.
So he came to me and he said, Richard, look, I don't care how big they are. I don't care what they know. He said, you can make the enemy. He says, but I don't need to make the enemy. I'm just going to come in and show the art, but you can say what you want. So when I started bringing, that gives me a lot of confidence to walk in and find the toughest guys and go, hey, you got any guys that are willing to fight that are really badass?
Yeah.
And the teachers would always, like, they do this and they go, you know what that is? And like, I don't know, 2 fingers. And he says, no, that's an inch. My guy breaks bricks. You don't want to mess with him. And I'm like, yeah, that's the guy that I want. So when I saw this, and when I brought guys over that were strikers, and I saw other people, but people that are strikers, and Rorion beating these guys, every single time it was the same result.
Yeah.
Because we had a secret weapon. They didn't know we were going to do. And this went on for a long time until we were into the UFC for a few years. So when he had 4 garages going, and he came to me and said, look, we can't go any further. We can't get recognized teaching in a garage. We have to have a studio. And I said, I agree. And then he stood there and, I sat there and went like, Richard. And I'm like, and I need money. And I'm like, yeah, you do need money. And he says, Richard, and I'm like, oh God. So, that's when I just, he said, yeah. And I'm like, wow. And it was scary to me, but that confidence, seeing what I'd already seen over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Before most people even started thinking about, jiu-jitsu, I mean, I was already involved in it for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I've seen that result over and over again. We started going to, we went to New Jersey, we went to New York, we went to Las Vegas in the late 80s. And seeing that kind of stuff, it was, and also my own results, because I never thought that I could, go up against any of these guys that had a black belt around their waist and come out ahead of the game. So
you said this story once where you're a blue belt and you walk into one of the schools and Rorion goes, do you have anyone that can fight? And then he's like, Richard, go fight that guy. And it's just like being put in that situation and walking out, victorious in that situation must have been such a confidence builder, not just mentally, but in the art that you're learning as well.
Oh yeah.
It's like the person's got a black belt around their waist and you're like, but I'm just a blue belt. But the skill that you had learned, in those garages really put you in the forefront of martial arts without even really realizing it in that situation until you made contact with somebody else.
Oh yeah. I mean, it does a lot. So it was scary because of the money, because, I came up with 40,000 and then I went to my parents and I went like, got it. This doesn't work out. I just borrowed 20,000 from my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And,
and this is in the late 80s as well. So that's like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to do the same thing, to put in, 10,000 more into the UFC.
Yeah.
So to put money into the UFC when the academy really is not making money.
Yeah. It's another chance to take, but it paid off because, like the academy is the biggest jiu-jitsu academy in the world, especially now with the boys moving into Gracie University and you provided an outlet for Henna and Huron to progress into who they became now as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, it didn't pay off, whatever. I can't hear.
I was just saying it. You know, it paid off huge for them to have an outlet to learn to teach in. You know, like I think that was such a big part of forming their personalities is interacting with so many people and being put in this position of leadership at such a young age. And that happens from the academy being established, you know, and then giving them
Right.
the confidence to go and record everything. So you know, it's just like I never thought about those little steps that, although that come from you providing that kind of ability for them to teach, you know, and that leads to the USC and that leads to you know Gracie University and so forth. Like there's all these things that come after the academy opening that wouldn't have happened if that leap of faith wasn't kind of like put in place. Is the audio breaking up?
Yeah, well, all of a sudden, all I heard, the last thing I heard you say was put in place, and then
Sorry, I was just saying that, you know, that's just something that is very interesting to me is that, you know, when you put in place the funds to get the school started, it provided this opportunity for so many other things that came up along the way.
oh yeah, I mean, you know, that a lot of people, I mean, a lot of people don't know. I mean, they just see, I mean, like the guys that, even the older guys that come in and start to learn, and when I say older, I mean guys into their 40s,
Yeah,
you know, not old suckers like me, but the guys that are in their 40s again, that they don't know. They just see jiu-jitsu schools, you know, all around.
yeah,
I mean, you know, there was no such thing. You know, it was four garages, you know, from it in the late 80s, you know, Rorion had four garages. You know, it had the Machados and Hickson and Hoyt in another garage, and I think maybe Hoyler. I'm not sure the fourth one, but you know, he had four garages going with a waiting list.
yeah,
So, you know, the academy was, you know, it was primed to start, and then, you know, and then the Machados left because of a falling out that Rorion had with Chuck Norris. You know, but still, and then they went their own way. But this whole thing, you know, it was me meeting Rorion, and that just, you know, talk to this person and talk to that person, and then helping him out here. I mean, I loaned him money probably, you know, less than a year after we met.
yeah,
You know, a couple $1,000 because he wanted to go back to Brazil and bring some stuff and sell it. You know, because people were crazy to buy like a champion juicer, or you know, he'd buy clothes and bring them back there to sell. He says, yeah, you know, so he did that early on, borrowed a couple $1,000, and when he got back from Brazil, he didn't have the money to pay me back.
yeah.
And I was like, come on, man. And he says, don't worry. He said, your interest on the money will be free classes, which I got free jiu-jitsu classes for 4 years.
That's
So that paid for, and I got my money back.
yeah,
So, you know, it was a good thing, but my experience is so much different, and I'm glad you're doing this just to tell people about how this whole thing started, how it blossomed after the UFC.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because like nowadays jiu-jitsu is everywhere. Like when you walk around, it's on your social media. You walk down the street, there's jiu-jitsu schools. The local karate school has a jiu-jitsu class going on. You know, it's the norm now. And it wasn't back then. Even like after the first couple of UFCs, you know, it wasn't until like UFC 5 that people are starting to integrate it into all of their training. So it still took time to build this following and for people to start understanding and getting involved in it. And for you to be involved so early in the piece, you know, and like I still recognize you as like one of the unindoctrinated dirty dozen, like the first 12 black belts to non-Brazilian black belts to get their black belt. And you're like you're in that forefront of those people,
Right. And that list is not accurate.
yeah.
That list is not, I mean, the way the list is shown, you know, because it shows Dave Kama was Hickson's first, and Dave Kama is not Hickson's first.
Yeah.
Chris Saunders is Hickson's first, and Chris and I got our black belts around the same time. So, but yet I don't even think you see Chris on the list, but you see Dave on the list.
Yeah.
So, you know, that whole thing with the list, and I contacted the guy, and, you know, and I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
don't care. Some guy has a list called the Dirty Dozen.
Yeah.
You know, it. You know, the thing is, it's changed so much. Jiu-Jitsu, as you well know,
Yeah.
as you've been involved for a while, and it's just exploding with techniques and how it's so sportive. You know, that's why it's hard for people, because, you know, a lot of times people say, oh, jiu-jitsu is a nice sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Rorion never said, oh yeah, we do jiu-jitsu and it's a great sport. He said that we martial arts champions and we did these fights.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that I never saw it as sport. I saw there was a sportive aspect of it, but it was always in the forefront when I was learning self-defense.
It's amazing how they've managed to keep that, because so many martial arts try and get people in through the guise of self-defense, but it's always presented sportively, because that's just the natural progression. Is people learn a skill and then they want to test it against other people, but we need a rule set and so forth. And jiu-jitsu, just the way the Gracies have always kept it back to what it was built for, which is the idea of, it came in a culture where if I liked your shoes, I'm going to take your shoes from you. So I better be able to defend myself if somebody's going to want to take my stuff from me. And they've kept it there. And it's people like yourself, and that keep introducing it to people through that first means of self-defense. Why do you think it's so important to keep teaching jiu-jitsu to people? Like, why do you find that jiu-jitsu is something that you want to share with people?
Because of what it did. I mean, all I can refer is to the post that I did it. And Scott Burr is a black belt under Steve Maxwell.
Yeah.
And Scott is helping me write this book. And we've just kind of, you know, changed the title of the book. It was something else. And now it's tentatively, you know, How Jiu-Jitsu Saved My Life. Because it did. I mean, I was using drugs. I wasn't happy. I wanted to quit, but I was still kind of stuck in this loop. And because of how it saved me and what it did to take somebody who had no confidence to give me, I mean, I'm not saying I'm the most confident guy in the world, because as we get older, you know, it's like things always change because of, especially in the physical stature. I'm a smaller, thin guy who's in his late 60s, but without jiu-jitsu, the confidence that it's given me and what it's done for me, and the ability to share this with others, I can't stop. This whole thing with this virus right now, it hurts me so much because I can't give away what I have inside of me.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Like this break that we're having to take. You know, people ask me like, oh, I see all the posts on social media and stuff. Like, I really want to get rolling and so forth. And I'm like, I don't really miss the rolling aspect of jiu-jitsu, because I know I'm going to be able to do that in a couple of weeks or months or whatever it is.
Right.
But there's the camaraderie that I'm missing. There's the connections with people that I'm missing. There's the ability to share information with people and see their reaction when they feel their body go through that move and like, oh, I can actually do that. Like I'm feeling that power. I feel that frame and so forth.
Yeah.
That's what I'm missing from it as well, is like that ability to share.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, like it's so impactful that way. It's just seeing like we felt it and we've gone through, and you know, like I was in a similar situation to you where I was 400 pounds when I started doing jiu-jitsu.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, you know, like I was quite a large, you know, it was 170 kilos for like the Australians that listen. But you know, like, so I was quite large when I started, and I'd been doing karate for, you know, almost 10 years at that point. And going through and had been awarded my black belt in and everything and that, but you know, it's just almost like the change that happened to me after starting jiu-jitsu, like the way that I ate, the way that I trained, the way that I viewed myself, was completely a huge change for me as well. jiu-jitsu did, I always say to the people that I meet, jiu-jitsu saved my life, because I'd be a very unhealthy 30-year-old right now if I hadn't of got into it. And it's just that internal feeling that you feel that's so impactful, that when you share that to somebody else and you see them start to have that same feeling in their body, and their mentality changes towards themselves and what they're doing, it is so rewarding to see. For yourself, like, why do you still keep with it? Like, what's your motivator to keep going now that you've gone through that change?
If I didn't, I mean, there's still a lot left in me. I want to show other people, because to me, it's so rewarding. First of all, when people come to class and they want what you have to give, it's like Rorion told me this a long time ago. He says, this is such a great thing, because people want to come see me. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, you had, and it's like, here's my money, show me some moves. It's such a nice thing that what they're willing to do, and you enjoy giving something to them in exchange. So you're making a living as well as giving something that is so important. And I was just about to say before, is that when one of the things that I love hearing from students, when I show them a move in a class and then they roll, and then they come up to me afterwards and they go, wow, what you showed me really works. Yeah. And I always say, like, oh, really? I thought I was teaching you the crap that doesn't work. I mean, I wouldn't be teaching this to you if it didn't work. Yeah. So just that they can, I've had other students that have been with me who've done other stand-up arts. And he said, Richard, he said, it was okay. I had a certain amount of confidence. But he said, I know when we came into fight class, if there was a guy bigger than me, he said, I didn't have anything that was a neutralizer because they was so much bigger. Yeah. He says in jiu-jitsu, and he said, I did stand-up arts for a year or two, and I said, I never felt confident when the guy was that much bigger. He says, now in jiu-jitsu, he said, it's totally different. I mean, this guy is 5'8", 160 pounds. He'll go with guys twice his weight. He says, it doesn't matter. He says, I know how to defend myself, how to neutralize, and possibly catch the guy. Yeah. So doing that, being able to do that, and then I tell my students, I said, I've rolled with guys 100 pounds more than me. Yeah. And I said, just that I can survive, especially, I haven't done that for probably roll with guys that are that big for, well, I just recently did like a little thing, side control stuff, but not really like doing any kind of rolling for maybe 10 years because, I'm 68 now. So I did it when I was in my mid 50s, but just that I could keep the guy at bay. Yeah. When you're in your late 50s with a guy who has 100 pounds on you and they can't catch you, that to me, that's victory, man. Yeah. That's to me, it's like, yes, So,
we talk about like this idea of jiu-jitsu for life, and my thing I always tell the students is like, I want to roll till I'm 100. Like I want to have my 100th birthday and we're going to all roll together and it's going to be fun like that. And you have to have that mentality of like how to protect yourself while you're going through that process. And, having that measuring device of like survival is actually the victory is something that I find people find so foreign, because every sport that they engage in, you have to win, and winning is by beating the other person. And ours isn't that. Ours is survive. Like, you just don't let them win. Delay their victory is a victory in itself. And it's a different kind of concept to put in. And so it's cool to hear you say that like you're like this later stage in your jiu-jitsu, that idea of survival is still the measuring device of success and what you're looking for in knowing you have that skill. And that's what keeps your confidence in the art going. Yeah. What would be like your one piece of advice that you'd kind of, or that you found was something that helped you with your jiu-jitsu journey, like there's all these like key phrases that we kind of get given. What was the one that was given to you?
There's no key phrase that is inside that, you know, but the thing that really kind of helped start to change the way that I started teaching is I got a call from Rorion Gracie. Gosh, it was about 10 years ago.
Mm.
And he said, why don't you come by for a free class? Why don't you come by and roll with me? And I'm like, and I'm, you know, to get a private with Rorion, it's not cheap.
No.
And I went, dude, he says, I can't afford that. And he goes, don't worry about the money. Just come in.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he said, bring me some avocados. So I'm like, okay. So I went and I had a class with him and I recorded the class and he showed me some things about the triangle.
Mm.
And when I was shown the triangle years ago, it was, you know, the guys that defend the triangle usually, you know, now there's so many different ways to defend, but they stack you up. And I could stay in that position of being stacked up on my back, on my neck, you know, going from the triangle to the arm lock. I was pretty flexible and I can stay in there. So I kind of, that was part of my game in my guard. You know, I was pretty decent at triangle arm lock combination. But he showed me the thing about doing it 100%, which I didn't understand the lingo at that time. But he showed me as far as like how to prevent the punch, how to slide your hip away, how to keep the neck, grab the leg, you know, that whole concept, which meant that you're not going to get stacked up anymore.
Yeah.
And it taught me how to do the triangle more efficiently and it helped me because I was starting to show this to other guys and it helped them hit the triangle more because the goal wasn't just to get the triangle. The goal was to set the move up so the triangle would be a higher percentage move, hard to defend. So, and that changed the way that I taught because if you want to do this for a long time, you can't stay in those positions without having, I mean, I had neck issues that took me 10 years to really rehab.
Yeah.
So I changed the way that I was originally taught. And I say, look, guys, you can do this, but if you want to last, you're best off not to do it like that. So, you know, as I age, my teaching has changed because there's no easy, you cannot rehab your neck or your back by doing strength exercises. It doesn't happen because if you have a problem with your back that people recognize now as they say, oh, it's your disc.
Yeah.
Well, remember the discs are inside the spine and the vertebrae is attached to the disc. The tendon is attached to the vertebrae. And what's attached to the tendon? The muscle is part of the tendon. So those muscles are constantly pulling and stressing. So if you're doing that, that's what's putting the stress on the spine, neck, back, whatever. So if you create those kind of demands on your body, you're going to screw it up. And then you're going to need surgery, which I tell people to avoid surgery at all costs. You don't want to be cut. So learn how to train smarter when you're younger and don't rely on your power, rely on the technique. And you have to learn when to give up the move so you don't injure yourself. So that's a long-winded answer for a short question, but you can't just put it in one little phrase, train smart, because they don't know what that means.
Richard, I just want to thank you so much for your time this morning. It was great to be able to talk to you and get your perspective on things. So I just want to say thank you so much. I'll let you go now. I asked for half an hour and you've given me 45 minutes. So I want to thank you for being so generous with your time.
My pleasure. Anytime, to me, I think that, as many people that can find out about the history and doing things for the longevity, I think it's important, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule and at the crack of dawn. I mean, for right now, it's the crack of dawn for me. It's a little afternoon, so.
And I'm really excited to hear that you're continuing with the book that you had started. That I had heard that you had started, and you were asking for titles last year for it. So it's so cool to hear that that's still being worked on and something that we're going to get soon.
Oh yeah, I just and I probably sent it to you already. I have a fan page.
Yeah.
For myself, and there's going to be little updates on the book and the progress, and little blurbs about it, because Scott, like I said, is helping me, and he's written some books before, so
yeah.
So we're really starting to get this thing, and hopefully I'll have the book ready in the fall, and I'll be doing some little seminars and book signings, and so
yeah, it's very exciting.
Thank you for
yeah,
bringing that
I
up.
can't wait for it. And I'll make sure we share that fan page as well, so that people can get onto it, so they can see it all kind of progressing along the way. But thank you again.
My pleasure. I just wanted to do a little advertising. This is about jiu-jitsu, guys.
I thought we were so close in matching tees.
Yeah. Anyways,